Hi, thank you for coming to my channel. I am going to go over defining the perimeter in PCI DSS today, which is a strategic guide to the scope of PCI DSS requirement, Chapter 4, Payment Card Industry Data Standards 4.0.1. Now, with PCI DSS, compliance begins with the scope of the project. You zero in on the security before controls are implemented or vulnerabilities are scanned. The entity must define what to protect. You cannot secure what you do not know you have. The assessed entity must confirm the accuracy of their PCI DSS scope by identifying all locations and flows of data account. This is an example of a nuclei, and I can use it as defining the CDE scope as well. Basically, the nucleus of the cell is the credit card data environment, the CDE. Now, the cardholder data environment is comprised of system components that store, process, or transmits account data. System components with unrestricted connectivity to the above. This also includes the handlers. The handlers store, process, or transmits cardholder data or sensitive authenticative data. CDE parameter, the neighborhood, restricted connectivity or unrestricted connectivity, meaning within the parameter, the yellow is all in scope, basically. So anything that touches credit card data or sensitive authenticative data of a credit card or debit card is going to be within scope, either software, physical, or virtual. Now, this goes over the scoping decision logic. Does the system component store, process, or transmit cardholder data or sensitive authenticative data? Sensitive authenticated data is like the code on the back of your card, that kind of thing. If yes, it's in scope. It falls underneath the PCI DSS rules. If not, then if it does not store, process, or transmit, is it connected to the CDE? Or does it impact the security of the CDE? If it does, it's in scope. This includes systems that facilitate security, such as jump servers, authenticated servers, or impact configuration. Authenticated servers like multi-factor authentication, for example. If multi-factor authentication is enabled to have access to it, that falls underneath the same in scope within PCI DSS. If it doesn't connect to it or impact it in a secure way, let's say you have a software security, McAfee, for example, installed, and it affects the cardholder data. Does it protect it? Yes. Since it touches it, it falls within scope, and you need to make sure that's secured. If it doesn't do any of those, the next question would be, is it isolated? Meaning no connectivity, no access, no impact whatsoever to the CDE, to the cardholder data. If it has nothing to do with it whatsoever, it's out of scope, you don't have to worry about it. It's when you don't do the scoping process, it's not required to do the scoping, but it's highly recommended because by scoping in, you will save money. You only secure that area that's needed. That's it. And if it's out of scope, or if you don't scope at all, everything's in scope. Then you have to secure everything, which means more money is being spent. More things that don't need to be secured is now being secured because you didn't do the scoping. Now, what is a system component? Um, when I talk on this page, talking about system components that actually touch, transmit, or carry or store credit card data extends beyond the physical boxes. It includes every logical and physical element, software and clouds, applications, APIs, containers, images, virtual PCs, serverless functions. The applications could be a simple I pop up that takes credit card data on your website. That needs to be secured. On virtualizations, which is virtual networks, which that's what VN stands for, or virtual switches or hypervisors. Basically, if you have a virtual network like let's say a VLAN 3, and you have your CDE on VLAN 3, VLAN 3 needs to be secured. But as for VLAN 2, 4, 5, whatever, none of those touch it, right? None of those communicate with VLAN 3 unless you have it truncated to talk with VLAN 3. That's a different story. But if it's isolated and it's on VLAN 3 and nothing else, none of the other VLANs or the main network touches VLAN 3, then they don't need to be in scope. So you don't have to worry about that. Infrastructure includes firewalls, routers, switches, servers, and workstations. Anything that touches it, even if it protects it, if it touches it, it's in scope. The hidden scope, connectivity and impact. Now, let's say you have a system and you have a CDE and you have the Guardian, which is the software environment, like on your computer, software virus protection, for example. Now, on the bridge, if it's unrestricted connectivity, if the bridge is unrestricted and it connects directly to the CDE from a clean system, if A talks to B and B is the CDE, then A is in scope. If A talks to B and B is CDE, then A is in scope. Because B is holding the CDE, A is talking to the CDE, which is on B. Kind of like VLAN 2. If VLAN 1 talks to VLAN 2 that's holding the CDE, VLAN 1 needs to be in scope. Now the CDE can have a security server, Active Directory, jump host, security impacting, systems avoiding security, authentication, patching, authentication again, patching again. Don't know why I have it twice, but there it is. DNS impact, the integrity of the CDE. If they fail, the fortress fails. Meaning you have a authentication. And if the authentication server fails, meaning it doesn't work anymore, then there's no way to authenticate, which means the whole system's down. The wall, reducing scope through segmentation. Without segmentation, like I said before, the entire network's in scope. Using segmentation, you're isolating it and you're reducing the scope and risk by putting the firewall to block everything else out, firewall rules, put on a different VLAN, etc., that kind of thing. Segmentation is not mandatory, like I mentioned before, but it is the most effective way to reduce assessment costs to organizational risks. Validating the wall. Is segmentation in place? If no, the entire environment of your corporation is in scope. If it's yes, did the assessor validate the effectiveness of the penetration test? If no, the entire environment is in scope because the assessor did not validate it. You might have segmented it, but you didn't get an assessor to do it, to validate it. If yes, scope is limited to the CDE. Now, it also mentions here requirement 11.4.5, segmentation controls must be penetration tested at least annually to verify they are operational and effective. So every year to do a penetration test, so it's an ongoing process. You can't just do it once and boom, it's done. You also want to make sure if any changes are made to the network, you have to retest it. It's like, think of it as a living organism. You constantly have to feed a cat. You can't just feed the cat once and expect it to live for the rest of the year, right? So you have to constantly look at your network, make sure everything's good and everything else. The pen testing is once a year, that's fine, but you have to make sure that the virus applications, antivirus applications, are up to date constantly. They're constantly updating. A lot of times they update every month. I know Microsoft updates their stuff every month at minimum. Sometimes they overdo it. There's when it comes to the antivirus software, if it doesn't update, then it's not a valid security system. You need it to update automatically. I don't know if they even have antivirus software anymore where you can just install it once and leave it alone, because attacks always change all the time. There's always different attacks. They're always changing. The encryption paradox. Now, the myth is, just because the data is encrypted, it is out of scope. If the data is encrypted at the same location that does not hold the keys, then the myth becomes truth. If the same place holds the key to decrypt the information, then it's a myth. The reality is, if you hold the key, you hold the scope, meaning just because you have because you have a data, let's say a server that encrypts all the data and the data is encrypted. If I hold the key to decrypt that, I need to be in scope. So the key could be a physical key. It could be a key fob. It could be a software key. The scope includes systems performing encryption and decryption, systems storing data, encrypted data, and the keys, and the key management system. That's why the word "and" is capitalized, because if you're storing encrypted data at a location that does not hold the keys at all, has no access to them, then technically that's out of scope for PCI DSS. You don't need to worry about it. The invisible breach, wireless technology. And we all love wireless. We all love wireless. Connected wireless LAN. If a wireless LAN connects to the CDE, it is fully in scope. Meaning, it's one of those software things where if it touches or connects or manipulates the security of the system, of the cardholder data environment, is in scope. Basically, it falls underneath that category. Now, a rogue detection required even if you don't use wireless. You must scan for rogue devices plugged into your ports, which is requirement 11.2.1. Attackers can plug a rogue access point into a port to bypass physical security, meaning a good one is called the LAN turtle. You plug it in. You could actually create your own. You use the Wi-Fi scanner first. You scan for the networks. You say, okay, you find out how their naming conventions work. Let's say ABC company free access, or whatever. But in order to get the free access, you have to have the password, right? So it's great that you have a password. However, if I'm scanning do a Wi-Fi analyzing test, and I find out that's how you name it, I can take the LAN turtle, connect it to your network, and call it ABCD free, something similar to your same naming, and I just change the letter, and don't require a password. Somebody who's trying to get on it, like an employee, they're like, oh, they don't know the password, but they see this other connector. They're like, okay, it looks like the same naming convention, so they connect to it, and then they connect to your network. They don't think nothing's wrong. I can see everything that they're doing. That's basically what this is talking about. That's why you have to protect anything, any port that has access to the CDE environment, anything that has access, ports, switches, routers. Scoping in the cloud and virtual layers. The hypervisor rule: if a hypervisor hosts a CDE VM, the hypervisor itself is in scope because it can impact the security of that VM. Cloud components, virtual PCs, containers, orchestration, Kubernetes, and serverless functions are all compute system components. If any of these have access or touches the CDE environment in any way, they're in scope. A hypervisor is basically, if you think about it in simple terms, think of your PC at home. You have a PC and you put an operating system on it. Boom, done, right? Pretend that PC is virtual. That's what a hypervisor is. It's like a virtual computer. Think of it that way. And then you put a VM on it. VM is basically a image. An image is like Windows 10. Windows 10 is an image. Linux is an image, stuff like that. So those are VMs that you could create on the virtual computer. Third-party service providers. Now, outsourcing operations does not automatically mean that you're outsourcing the risk. A lot of companies love to outsource the risk. They'll even pay a little bit more money to outsource the risk so they don't have to take it. Now, TPSP, which is third-party service provider, is in scope if they store, process, or transmit your cardholder data. Or two, they impact the security of CDE, example, remote support, web hosting. Now, step one, it's missing a crucial point that I mentioned earlier. They can store your data as long as it's encrypted and they don't hold the keys to decrypt the data. Technically, they're out of scope of PCI DSS. They don't need to follow the PCI DSS rules. If they hold the keys to decrypt your data, or if the data is not encrypted, they need to follow the PCI DSS rules. As for the transmitting of their cardholder data, that falls on you, on your company, if they're storing the data and the data is encrypted and they're not holding the keys to decrypt it. You're holding the keys. They're not holding the keys. You got to make sure that that transmission of that data is encrypted to the storage or secured. Somehow that data is secured. Now, that falls on you. If they hold the keys or the data is decrypted, meaning they can read it, it falls on them to secure that network somehow. Impact the security of the CD. Yeah, if they basically, what that means is there's a lot of third-party companies out there that will provide you with service like protecting your environment with antivirus software, stuff like that. And if they're providing a live service and they have access to your CDE, then they need to follow. They're technically in scope because they have access to it. Anybody, anything, anywhere, if they have access to it, in scope. Now, a written agreement needs to be defined on who controls what you control, what they control. It needs to be all documented. So that way, if something happens, you have a documentation. Now, I want to go back a slide or two or three. I forgot to mention something. Oh, maybe not. Thought I forgot something. I forgot what it was. Oh, I guess I'll find it eventually. Now, the annual confirmation, meaning the annual penetration test, which is required by 12.5 and 12.5.2, is identify all the data flows, identify all locations of account data, identify all connected systems and third parties, identify all segmentation controls. This will be your confirmation process and your scope verification process. Entity's responsibility. Scoping is not a one-time setup. It must be documented and confirmed by the entity. That's why I was trying to go back right there. You remember when I mentioned that I remember what the slide looks like now. Right here. Did the assessor validate the effectiveness? Now on this one, I don't have it written here, but if they do validate it, they need to document it, why it's validated, how well why is the segmentation okay to process? What's this reasoning behind it? It needs to be documented by the assessor itself. Managing change. Now, basically, you have your test environment, you have your production environment. You do everything in your test environment, make sure everything's running smoothly. Do your testing, and you'll be amazed how many companies they have a testing environment, but they rarely use it. Or if they use it, they don't even really use it that much. And then the production, which is your live production. Scope is a living organism. Trigger events for rescoping, significant changes, new hardware, software. Let's say you put a new hard drive in it. You need to rescope it, retest it, and make sure that it's secured. Network boundary changes. Meaning if you had another building, you bought a building down the street and you have that connected, is it in scope? Does it touch the CDE? Will it need to touch the CDE? Need to do rescoping all over again. You're constantly changing. Any updates, you have to rescope it. The risk, a single firewall rule can change a bridge, a test network to the CDE, instantly expanding the scope. That is true. A single wall rule. Let's say port 80, which is internet, and normally is closed because it's unsecured. It's an unsecured internet protocol. You use port 443 for web, for secure shell, for secured HTTPS, basically. Port 80 is just for the regular HTTP, and that's it. Your old style internet access, which is not secured. But someone says, hey, I'm just going to turn on port 80, thinking nothing will happen. It's just something simple. You just turn it on. Well, now you have another port that hackers can use to get your CDE. So you need to make sure port 80 does not have access to your CDE. Is port 80 supposed to be on? That's up to the organization if they want to have it on or not. There's old software that needs port 80. But you need to make sure that it's not touching the CDE, and if it is, make sure it's secured. Mastering the scope. So you define the scope, you identify the scope, you isolate the scope, you validate the scope, and then you confirm. So you map the flow of the cardholder data. You define it. What's connected to it? Your cardholder data environment includes anything and everything that touches it or have access to data, credit card data. So if a computer has it, then you need to make sure the computer's part of the environment. And then you need to identify, catalog, connect, and secure impacting systems. So the flow of data, it goes from the store to the bank to your account, whatever, however you ever set up. And then anything that's attached to it, you want to identify what's attached to it. Security impacting, security systems, antivirus softwares, Windows security, computers, servers, VMs, etc. Then you need to isolate it, segment it to reduce the perimeter, meaning you don't need to secure everything, but by segmenting it, you're taking this huge building of data or your whole network, and you're just segmenting it into a smaller piece. And that's what isolating means. And then you validate it, and you validate it by doing penetration tests, by test the by penetrating testing the segmentation. Then you confirm it. Review annually and after changes. So, granted, you have to document everything, do an annual review, do an annual pen test. But if you make any changes within that year, you have to do it again to that environment. So, a lot of companies will now refrain from adding anything or too many things. If they need to add something, they better make sure they add everything and anything that they think they will need that's going to touch the CDE all at once, because they'll make it a lot better versus doing a pen test 3 or 4 times a year just because you make 3 or 4 changes within the year. It's kind of weird. Accurate scoping is the prerequisite for a secure and compliant environment. And it looks like that's the last slide. Well, thank you very much for tuning in, and like and subscribe if you like it. And if you are looking for a PCI DSS or a consultant, I'm a guy that's looking for that, and I'd be more than happy to get hired by you. And you can check out my LinkedIn account. I should have it on my YouTube channel. All right, thanks for watching in, and hopefully you have a great day.